Former Congressman Dr. Ron Paul joins us here for the next 15 minutes, and I've got a lot of questions for him. Up on Infowars.com, we have the headline, Ron Paul, dollar will collapse, gold will go to infinity. He said that yesterday on CNBC. I'd like him to repeat what he talked about and then expound on why he says we're going that direction. Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be with you. Well, you know, on the gold, something I've thought about for a long time, I did qualify that to a degree because when they ask you on the air on a business station about investments, I don't get involved in that. And they wanted to know what gold was going to be at the end of the year, and of course I refused to say. But I said on long term, all paper currencies, you know, self-destruct. That means gold could go to infinity, and this would be very destructive. So that will come if we continue to do these policies, and I see no possibility at the moment of changing our policies. So the demand for spending and the demand for deficits are such that they will keep printing the money. Even today when the Fed has an announcement, he's not going to say, oh, we're going to quit inflating. The question is, are we going to inflate $85 billion a month or $80 billion a month? So that is the course of looking for destruction of the dollar. And in many ways, they've accomplished a whole lot since 100 years ago. The dollar of 1913 is worth about 2 or 3 cents. So although it's been doing it steadily and gradually, and it hasn't been catastrophic, we've had a lot of catastrophic events in the meantime, like Great Depressions, financing war, big inflation, and all these other problems. So I don't think it looks good for the dollar. If gold does end up going, into infinity where it has no dollar price, it's very, very bad news. People who own gold think, oh, that's great news, but it really isn't. It's a bad political event. That means the country and the whole world will be in great danger, and it's the kind of thing that we would like to avert.
Absolutely. In fact, we have a graph from 1913 right through 2011, and you can see the dollar's lost over 97% of its value. And so it's already really collapsed. It's just that we've grown up during its collapse, but now there's not much value left. I'm seeing real inflation everywhere, but they seem to spin it on the news and say that inflation is low. What do you think about the official inflation numbers?
I don't believe them, whether they say less than 2%, 1% inflation. But then if you go and look at certain things that are pretty important, like medical care costs right now are skyrocketing, and bond prices are in a bubble. So in the various categories, there's a tremendous amount of inflation. But this was another thing that came up yesterday on the show is the definition of inflation. They generally say, what's the CPI? Well, the government gives us statistics. They alter it. They don't tell us the truth about the prices. And like housing prices are going up very rapidly now, but the CPI doesn't reflect that. So I think about the money supply. If the money supply is going up, you have a lot of inflation. Many times it will raise prices, but that is secondary to the biggest harm it does because it makes interest rates lower than they should be, so everybody's getting false information. I think we're back into an inflationary bubble in housing right now because lots of activity right now because interest rates are way too low. They're not market. And therefore, you have this excessive debt accumulation, malinvestment, and for the most part, rising prices too. But if you look at only the CPI, people are very much misled. What you have to think about is the cost of living of the average person in the middle class. And, free market economics shows us that, if you destroy a currency, you do destroy the middle class. The freer the market is and the sounder the money, the larger the middle class. And we have been pretty good compared to so many other countries. We were always bragging about the largest, wealthiest middle class ever, but that's not the case anymore. So I think we're even vulnerable to some of the things like going on in third world nations in Brazil right now.
Sure.
Some people are doing quite well, but there's another large number of people not doing well, and we have a lot of people unemployed and on food stamps, and
sure.
Productivity's done. So we're looking for trouble ourselves, even like what we're witnessing on the television in these third world countries. We could turn our country into a third world country if we're not careful.
Well, absolutely. If you look at the billions of bullets, the armored vehicles, the FBI director today admitting domestic drone operations, the government is preparing for war with the American people, and you see governments all over the world in this world inflationary spike moving to suppress their populations. Can you speak to why you think there's such a homeland security buildup against the American people, or do you?
I do think they prepare. You know, it's amazing how they look at these things differently. The government of Turkey was sympathetic to the rebels in Syria, and probably with a little bit of pressure from us, they were helping, you know, the rebels, including the Al-Qaeda. At the same time, you know, it couldn't happen there. Now there's a rebellion going on in Turkey that people are demonstrating. Oh, well, you guys now are the bad guys. So think of many countries we have helped support the rebels, even though it's on again, off again. One time we're supporting a group, then we're against them. But we generally support all this overthrow. But what if there are demonstrations on our streets? I mean, it's just like in Turkey. They're cracking down and say, well, you guys are really the bad guys. The rebels in Syria, they're good guys. But when it comes here, there will be no soft touch. They're going to be very, very tough. And they might not say that we know it's coming or they're planning it, but it's a contingency, and they are prepared to think that if enough people get annoyed enough to start demonstrating, and I know there's a lot of people very angry because there is this division of wealth right now. The rich get richer, and those that have influence in government and laws and part of the Federal Reserve System, they do quite well. But the number of people who are suffering are growing, and I think that will probably continue.
Absolutely. It's the cronyism, the opposite of free market, and then the media, the dinosaur media, is trying to scapegoat the free market when we have the opposite of that. Since you raised this, your son, Senator Rand Paul, came out 2 weeks ago and said, why are we funding Al-Qaeda in Syria? I said that 2 years ago because it was in the foreign press, and I was the conspiracy guy. Now it's all over the news that the main force, around 60% of them, are real Al-Qaeda chanting, we're going to blow up America again. And, you know, my point is, when I say inside job, the media spins it. I mean, why does the military-industrial complex create Al-Qaeda, create the Taliban, fund them? Now they're funding this group. And then when they attack us again, they'll take my rights, your grandchildren's rights away. I mean, how outrageous is this that the TSA wants to stick their hands down our pants, Dr. Paul, but then, meanwhile, our government's funding Al-Qaeda?
Well, they do it, and of course there's a lot of money involved. The military-industrial complex is very much involved, but there's a lot of ignorance involved, too. The Al-Qaeda, you know, if they were serious about this, they'd ask the question, why do so many people want to attack us? They never ask that. They just say we have to have this global war on terrorism. It's forever, and what we have to do, we have to stop it. But how do they stop it? By taking away our freedoms. We send kids overseas to fight wars that are unconstitutional, to save our Constitution, and also to protect our freedoms. And here at home, they're doing exactly the opposite. But they never ask the question about why, and what's the incentive, what's the motive? And of course, the motive is quite a bit different than they pretend. The motive for them is always, well, there's just a bunch of bad guys out there, and they hate us, and we're rich and free, and they hate our freedom. And I don't buy into that. I think they're sick and tired of us being in their country, occupying their country, and overthrowing governments all the time, and switching allegiance, and they finally get tired of it, and that's why we end up with this mess.
Congressman Ron Paul, former Congressman Dr. Paul, is our guest. Can't wait to get you on in September when you launch the amazing, as I've seen some advanced copies of it, online and physical homeschooling curricula that's just a revolution against this tyranny. But the 2 points, final points I want to get into with you here, obviously, is the NSA. You criticized the NSA back in 1984 on the House floor. We've played the clip here, and said it's going to end up being Big Brother, and pointed out what they were doing. Told the story of the ice cream cone. The kid goes into Baskin-Robbins and tells his birthday to get the free ice cream cone, and it ends up in a government database. Now it's all out in the open. You've got private companies using it for unfair trade advantage. That's really what it's all about from my research. And do we deserve an apology now, you and I and others, libertarians, Lew Rockwell being called conspiracy theorist, warning of the NSA. I mean, everything we've talked about is now coming out. A, do we deserve an apology? B, what does it signify to the awakening, though, that so much has now come out and Congress has a 10% approval rating and mainstream media is dying?
Well, we might deserve it, but we better not hold our breath and expect it. But, you know, I would be quite satisfied with them just changing policy and the American people would wake up. I don't even care who gets the credit. But if the American people wake up and then agree with us and say, hey, maybe there is something to this, they've gone too far and there's a limit. But I'm still annoyed by the people saying that and there's so many, and even the conservative, both the conservative and liberal TV stations say, but I want to be safe. They are going to attack us. There will be 9/11. I have to give up some of my privacy. It's that kind of stuff that is bad. People are getting annoyed, but not enough to look at it on a principle like the Fourth Amendment. I mean, this is what they have to do. So I think that under today's conditions, we can expect things to maybe move in our directions, but I'm not holding my breath for them to actually apologize to us.
I played this before you came on, but the entire Miss USA contest, I watched a bunch of their responses. They asked about the NSA and things, and Miss Alabama, all of them that I saw, said, I want you to listen to my phone to be safe. What would you say to Miss Alabama? I mean, she doesn't know government's always the big threat. What about being safe from government?
Yeah, they have to come around to the belief of the majority of American people now that our government doesn't, tell us truth. But if they want to be safe, do they want to be safe from wife beating and everything else? Governments could make us perfectly safe if we're perfect slaves. You know, if you become a slave, they might feed us well, but we have no liberties left. But we would be safe and from outsiders, but we wouldn't be safe from our own government or our slave owners. And yes, if that's what they want, if they're willing to give it up, they don't have enough respect nor understanding. They think that's the only responsibility of government, but they never even talk about safety in the Constitution. The President and the Congress are supposed to protect our liberties. We're supposed to worry about our safety and security and how we provide for our families. But this whole thing, obsession with safety, but the founders understood this issue so clearly, and Franklin and others would say, you know, if you do, you're going to end up with neither safety nor, freedom.
Yeah, you don't get
if you want your freedom, you cannot give up. You cannot give up any of it for the idea that people are going to take care of us either physically or economically.
Sure, you never get safety when you create a big giant government. You get tyranny. A final question. I agree with you that I don't like the whole Border Patrol thing because they only use it to keep Americans from getting out. That's now admitted. They used illegals to build part of the border fence. It was just a boondoggle for rich guys because it had like spots in it for the game to go through and things. So it was, literally a white elephant. But if you get 15, 20, 30 million illegals, 46 million in the next decade here, they get to have their babies free, they get welfare, and most of them vote to take my guns and are basically clients of the government because the government's there from the day they get here, not like immigrants in the past that came here to work. Some of them do. I believe in immigration. I believe that we need people to, add, new ideas and blood to this country. But at the same time, I'm really concerned about this amnesty bill. What's your take on it? And Rand has said that, well, if it's a good bill, he would support it because Obama's already done legalization by fiat, which I understand. But can you give us your take on it and then give us your take on what Senator Paul's saying?
Well, I'm not for amnesty, that is giving them citizenship. But I also think that we could change things where workers coming back and forth would be a lot easier and that they wouldn't have to be criminals. But there's two things. I don't think automatic citizenship or amnesty or our birthright citizenship, but the big thing is no welfare. See, I don't want somebody to come in here illegally, be able to get free medical care and free education at the same time they have the right to vote. No, I don't want that. So I don't want the amnesty. But I also don't like the idea that we have barbed wire fences and we have machine guns and get so.
So what do we do? What would you do? What's constitutional? Because there's all these reasonable reasons to do this, but when you look at the bill, it's like Obamacare. It's an open blank check.
But the portion that I've been talking about the most and Campaign for Liberty's been talking about has been the national ID card. See, a lot of conservatives who want the illegals kept out are going along with this biometric national database.
It'll be selectively enforced.
Way too much, and it probably won't work. It's going to only work against it's sort of like guns. It'll work against the American people. We'll all have to carry the card, but the illegals won't necessarily have to have it.
Sure, if you were in the House still.
But that's what I think the biggest danger of that particular bill. And of course, if there's amnesty where they get voting rights and constant welfare, that's not a benefit to any of us.
Would you vote this current bill up or down?
Well, from what I know about it, I wouldn't have any interest at all to vote for it.
All right, that's powerful. Former Congressman Ron Paul, we're very proud of the work you're doing, and we appreciate you. I know you've got a lot of sites. What is the best site for us to visit, all things Ron Paul?
Actually, I'm going to have a new website that I'll use more in the near future. But, going to my homepage, I keep up with a lot of my activities on my Facebook page. That would be a good place to go right now.
Okay, so go to your official Facebook page.
Yeah, Ron Paul on the Facebook.
All right. Well, former Congressman Ron Paul, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
There he goes. Well, that is an important interview. Again, I love Rand. I have known Rand Paul, not super well. I interviewed him probably 15 times. I've been at a few events he was at, interviewed him when he was running for Senate here. I remember back when he would campaign for his dad would always come on about once a month. But when his dad was first running for Congress, they'd say, hey, can you get Rand on? Because, we're really doing a push. And so I get Rand on to raise money and promote Ron Paul. I know Rand well, and I know he's a good guy. I've talked to him privately and stuff, but I just think the amnesty bill is unfair, unconstitutional, and dangerous. And I agree with his dad. I would vote it down. And Rand's talking about voting for it. And I hope he's just playing politics, because he's done that on some things. There you go. His dad would, right now, the way this is, vote it down. And that's why I love Ron Paul. He just does what's right, what's constitutional, what's fair. Doesn't play politics. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Now you can watch Alex Jones live at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
You can also browse the network, the InfoWars Nightly News,
and over 60 movies and documentaries all together in one place.
You can watch the Alex Jones Radio Show live as it happens.
So check it out, Infowars.com/show.